Returning once again to our friends at Victis with a playthrough of one of their games. But fear not, this is not another Napoleonic jour de gloire battle. This is actually an American Civil War battle. And it's not even actually a Victis game. It is the Battle of Cedar Mountain, 1862, from Victis issue 153, which was at the end of 2020. Now, this game is designed by Pascal Toupy, who has also done the Napoleon series from Shakos, 1806, 1807, and 1815. And it covers, obviously, the Battle of Cedar Mountain on August 9th, where Stonewall Jackson perhaps did this amazing flag-holding, saber-charging, cheering thing on the cover. This is actually part of a series that is not published by Victis. It's published by Worthington Games, and it is their Civil War Brigade Battle Series, which started in 2020, I think, with Antietam or Shiloh, one of the two, I can't remember. It has since gone to encompass, I think, 5 or 6 games, with the most recent one being Franklin, that's shipping right now. And Gettysburg, which shipped very recently. And I've been intrigued by this system. It just looks really nice, and it's allegedly pretty simple. It's only 8 pages of rules, and it's pretty popular, actually. Wouldn't be surprised if it was Worthington's one of their more popular game series. But I wanted, before I picked up one of the games, because they're somewhat expensive given Worthington's production quality, I wanted to check out how it plays. And it turned out that there was a small scenario for Cedar Mountain that was published in Victis in 2020. And so I tracked down a copy of this at a good price, and I wanted to give it a shot to see what it's like. And again, footprint, very small here. We're talking about, maybe like 2 magazine widths of a map. Very tiny, and features some Civil War goodness, and looks like it can be played pretty quickly. It's a 7-turn game, not too many units. So the Civil War Brigade Battle Series is kind of a build as like an old school war game, simple to play. The problem with this is that, first of all, this magazine's out of print, so you have to check it down on the secondary market. Second of all, the magazine is all in French, which, I mean, it's a great magazine, but if you don't read French, you're just going to kind of look at it for the pictures. It does come with the rules for the game with the magazine. Unfortunately, they are also in French. And while I can read and understand French, I probably cannot do so at a level that would make all of the subtleties of the rules get through to me. Like I would probably struggle to learn how to play the game correctly with this rule book. Additionally, all the charts and tables are in French, and they're in the rule book. So what am I to do? Why did I order this if I can't learn how to play it? Well, the good part is the English rules. Well, they came with this. This is a pre-owned copy, so I'm not sure if these were printed by the person who owned this before me, or if they actually came with the magazine. It's, to me, I mean, they're printed on a really nice paper, and there's like a thicker cover sheet, and they're nicely laid out. And they've got the Victis branding on them. So I'm not entirely certain where these came from. Either way, this is the original rules that came when this was released in 2020. Which, if you just want to play that, that's fine. You can, print these out. They're on Victis' site. So even though the magazine's in French and the rules are in French, you can get all the English rules for all their magazine games on their website and print them out. But the Civil War Brigade Battle Series has been around for a couple of years, and there have been some modifications and changes to it with each successive volume. We are up to Series Rule 1.4. This is running what I believe to be Series Rule 1.1, or possibly even 1.0, because this game came out shortly after the very first Civil War Brigade battle game. So while you can definitely play it with these, I wanted to get a sense of where the system is at now. So I went on Worthington's site and downloaded the 1.4 rules. These are the rules that are going to be coming in, I think, Franklin, and the next game that's going to be in that series, which I can't remember at the moment. There's been a lot of stuff added. Now, it's basically the same game, but there have just been some things that have been added. So things like building breastworks and stuff in games that feature them are now in here. There's some additional tweaks to cavalry and how they fire when they're dismounted. But the biggest thing, I think, is melee. There is an actual melee phase in the system now that was not present in the version 1.0 through 1.3 rules, I believe. So we're working with the newest stuff. Now, I'm not sure if this will be completely compatible. It should be. Nothing has changed about the counters. It's really just extra stuff in the rules. But we will discover that, I guess, as we play. So it's a pretty straightforward system. It's based on strength points. You can see the units have a fire strength there, and and it also serves as their sort of hit points. So when they take hits, you will put a marker under them to decrease that. And then at the end of the game, you will compare casualties between the two sides. You'll get a difference for one side or the other. You'll score VPs, and you might score VPs in other ways as well. But if you want the most up-to-date rules for Civil War Brigade Battle Series, and that goes if you have any of the other games that came with previous versions, you can download this off of Worthington. It is still 8 pages, and the new stuff is kind of highlighted. I don't have a color printer, so it was just highlighted in dark, but it's highlighted in green, I believe. So we will be playing with that. Additionally, for this game specifically, as I said, the tables were in French. So I went on Via Victis' website and I downloaded the English tables. So again, there are some discrepancies here. There is some modifiers for fire when you're firing with dismounted cavalry that's not reflected on this chart because this edition of the rules didn't exist then. And while there is no real adjustments for melee, I don't believe, nothing on this chart will indicate melee. But it's not a big deal. We can play around that. So yeah, so I've got the charts, I've got the map, I've got the units. Let's talk about Cedar Mountain. So Cedar Mountain. We've got the Union and the Confederates squaring off around Cedar Mountain. We've got all of these hexes with stars in them. These are going to be victory point hexes for the Union. And essentially, we're going to play 7 turns, battling it out back and forth. And at the end of the game, whoever has done more casualties will earn the difference in victory points. And the Union will score 2 victory points for every hex of the Cedars that they control. So the Union here, the attacker, the Confederates are the defenders. And as you can see, the Union artillery vastly outnumbering Confederate artillery. My strategy with the Union, use that artillery superiority to wipe out the Confederate artillery and then cleave that advantage into pushing them off off this hill where the Cedars are. We've also got Ewell back here. His division is, I guess in the Confederate terms, it would have been a corps, but essentially it's a division size. They are not going to get to move until turn 7, so right near the end of the battle. So they're going to be sitting there doing nothing, essentially. I don't even think they can fire with their artillery, but I'll double check that. And then we've got A.P. Hill, who's going to be coming in starting on turn 5 and turn 6, and he's going to be coming in... I believe he's going to be coming in somewhere down here. He's going to be coming in along this road here. So he's going to reinforce the Confederate position. So the Union have 3 turns before, well, 2 full turns before they've got to contend with additional forces. We do have advanced elements of A.P. Hill's forces in the orange here. We have got Stonewall Jackson in gold. He's the corps commander, the overall commander. And then we've got part of Ewell's corps here in front. With Winder down this direction. We've also got a veteran unit here. You can tell because the numbers have different colors. So if a unit has a black number, it is a, I don't know what the exact term is. It's like veteran. Gold is like elite or seasoned, and 9 is green. The actual game from Worthington has these numbers in boxes, so they're a little bit easier to see. But I believe the Union has I don't believe the Union has any green units. As far as I can tell, I think they're all all basically the middle, and then the Confederates have 1 green unit and 1 elite unit. So it shouldn't be too hard to remember that. We're going to be fighting in this cornfield here, across this stream, potentially down these roads. Unions might want to try and outflank since there's a nice cornfield here to walk through. It should be pretty fun. I'll show you the game as we play. I've been eager to try this out, curious to see how I like it. And it's very easy mechanically, so that'll be a nice breezy way to play a game for you. So let's get started. The Battle of Cedar Mountain, 1862. Stonewall Jackson versus Banks. As you would expect from a battle simulating Cedar Mountain, we begin with an artillery duel across the ridge between the Confederates and the Union soldiers. In the offensive fire phase, the Union fired all of these artillery off. And when you take a hit, so let's back up. When you fire your artillery, you can combine fire onto a single target, or you can shoot at multiple different targets. Artillery range in this game is up to 5 hexes. So we had these 4 units fire here, and we had these 2 units fire here. So we rolled pretty well. So you look at the combat table, you add up your total firing factors, you roll the die, you see what you get. We got a couple hits in morale checks. No one's morale was affected. There might be some DRMs for terrain or flanking. And if you're shooting at limbered artillery, you get an advantage. And but anyways, the effects, Winder's artillery took a couple of hits here on this ground. And Courtney, under Ewell, took a hit. And then they fired back, and we did some hits to that Union artillery. So very, very simple. You just roll some dice, do some hits. You use these markers that have like hits on them to show how many hits you've taken. and then there's a bunch of them. So like if you have a big unit that's like 16, for example, they have bigger markers. Anyways, that counts down the unit's strength, and that modifies their strength too. So after the artillery takes hits, then it doesn't fire at 6, it fires at whatever it is. And so you can feel the unit degradation as you go, and then when you reach a certain level, you'll flip it over. Usually it's about half. They become, I think it's called demoralized, and there's some effects on that. The only movement that the Union took is moving their cavalry, which they started dismounted. There's no reason to have this cavalry be mounted in the woods, and also cavalry who are mounted cannot fire. They can just move very far. So unless we're going to try and do some sort of flanking maneuver, at some point, we're just going to leave it dismounted. And what we're thinking about doing is just, we're going to artillery duel back and forth. I don't think the Confederates want to charge the line, and I don't think the Union want to charge so they can find a place to do it safely. But we're just watching the flank over here, make sure that nothing crazy happens, because this is a pretty good unit. And that turn took me all of like 3 minutes. So then we move to the Confederate player. We're going to do the same thing, roll back and forth, and we'll just keep going. All right, artillery duel continues. Pretty ineffectual on the Confederate side of the turn, but this Courtney's artillery under Ewell was actually routed from the barrage, from the shelling from the Union forces. So it was forced to retreat 2 hexes, take an extra hit. It's actually quite, and limber. It's actually quite beat up now. It's only got 2 strength points. So it's on its reverse side. It's limbered, and actually it was routed, so it needs to go 3 hexes. Through these woods, that does expose Stonewall Jackson to artillery fire. We don't want that. But another thing in the 1.4 version of the rules that is not going to be in the base rules of this particular game are panic markers. So this is a new thing that was added, I think, for 1.3 or 1.4. Essentially, anytime a unit retreats or routes, it adds a panic marker to the hex they were standing in. And then anytime a unit adjacent to that marker would retreat or make a morale check, it makes it harder for that check to happen by 1. So just a little extra chrome there to reflect sort of like panicking formations. They don't have markers in this game because panic wasn't in the rules when this game was made, so I'm just using little red discs as a reminder. And then at the end of the turn, which we're at now, these all disappear. So they only last for the turn. Kind of an expected result in the Confederate defensive fire phase. Their defensive fire routed 2 Union artillery batteries, who then consequently rallied, but forced them off the ridge. And now the Union's wondering if maybe this is where they make the attack, because they know that next turn AP Hill is going to be entering the game down this road, and so they want to try and do some damage before the reinforcements get here, especially now that they've lost some key pieces of artillery that they were going to use to try and disorder some of these units. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to move forward with Williams. So infantry units have a movement point of 6, every single one. So 1, 2, 3, you got to stop when you enter a zone of control. 1, 2, we're going to go there, and we'll send, it's probably a bad idea to send against the Stonewall Brigade, but we're going to try it anyway, the dismounted cavalry. We're going to go there, and then we probably want 2, 3, we probably want Williams himself on one of these units to give him an extra die roll modifier. And I think that's probably all for the time being. Yeah. Oh, you know what? Actually, I can't send the dismounted cavalry. They are not within 4 of their commander, so I got to move him. Okay, that being done, we're just going to make an attack here with these 2 units, and we'll see how it goes. So the first thing that happens is defensive fire, and we want to decide where Garnet is going to be shooting. Probably we want to shoot him at Williams, just to see if we can kill the leader. So we roll some dice. They're in clear terrain, so there's no modifiers to the dice. What do we get? We rolled an 8, so we cross-reference that 8 with 9 strength points, and we rolled an 8. So we do 1 hit to... Who is this under here? To Gordon. So he becomes a 14, so we take a marker, and we put it underneath him. Now, if we had rolled a 10, we would have possibly done a leader check, a death check, but we didn't. And then because he took a hit, we got to do a morale check. I rolled both dice at once just to save my wrists. He rolled a 1, that's easily passes. The morale of a black strength point unit is 7, so he is good. Now we're going to do defensive fire with Andrew's artillery. He's got 3 strength points, but he is firing at canister range, so he's going to be ×2. He's firing at 6 strength points. See what we get there. Wow, that's pretty good. He rolled a 10 plus. So at 6 strength points, that's going to be 2 hits, and we just barely passed the morale test on that one. So he is going to go down to 16 strength points. So you always take defensive fire first before you get to fire. Dangerous to charge in the 19th century. And I guess technically we could have also fired with the Stonewall Brigade. No, we couldn't have because he was not adjacent. Only if you are 1 hex away. So yeah, so we did that correctly. So now we get a chance to offensive fire. Let's see what Crawford can do. We're gonna have, so I have the option. I can combine their fire into this guy here, which might be a good idea, or I can try and get rid of this artillery. And I think I kind of want to get rid of the artillery while it's sitting here weak. So we're gonna have Crawford fire on Andrews. And as we know now, he took 2 hits, so he is now at 16 strength points. It was successful enough to drop him a column on the combat table. We rolled the dice. He rolled pretty well as well. He rolled an 8. And an 8 on 16 is 2 hits to the artillery, who also, by the way, passed their morale check. That's going to take the artillery down to 1 strength point left. So probably want to get that out of there when it's the Confederates' turn. And we got one more fire combat to do here. We got Banks. He's on a unit with 14. Banks, as a leader, provides a +1 die roll bonus when he's with the brigade that is firing. So we'll roll that up. We're on the 15, and we rolled pretty well there as well. We did 1 hit, and the unit failed its morale check. So here's kind of how this works. First, we give... Oh, I'm actually -2, so hold on. 6, because he's in the woods. So 6 on 14 -2. So it's just a morale check, no actual damage. But he did fail the morale check, and so that is going to cause him to rout. We're going to put a panic marker where he was, and then he's got to go back 3. 1, 2, 3 towards his end of the board. So you can see how you can push units away without necessarily causing them damage, and you know he's routed now. I don't think I have to look in the rules to see if you flip him over. No, flipping him over is demoralized. So I think he just routed away. So it does receive a route marker. It will have a chance to try and rally at the end of the Confederate turn. And we can advance into the hex if we want to, and I think I want to because we can get rid of this. This is the end of the Union turn, so this is going to go away. There's no other fire happening. We do want to advance into those woods because that will protect us against fire and get us closer. So there are some new things in the rules for routed units. So in the original version of the rules, they can only move 1 hex and they can't enter Zoc and so forth. In version 1.4, there are some additional restrictions to routed units. They have no Zoc. They may not fire. If they're fired on, there's a column shift to the right, and if they take any sort of hits, they route 3 additional hexes, and they can only move half their movement instead of 1 hex. So, yeah. Anyways, that's just some of the stuff that's different. So we made some progress. We might continue this push when it comes back to the Union, but the Confederates are going to get a chance now to answer. All right, moving right along. Williams' attack was very successful. They managed to repulse Winder's counterattack. Stonewall fired to no effect, and the brigade under Winder was pushed back very hard. Took 3 losses in the face of combined fire from Banks's 2 brigades. So, and then we didn't rally that green unit that they had driven off earlier. So they are pushing Winder back into the woods and opening up that Confederate left flank. This is a super breezy game. It is. I can see the appeal here. It doesn't have necessarily like the chrome of something that's a little bit more complex. Like let's take Jour de Gloire, for example. A lot less chrome here, a lot simpler of a system, but it does have its own unique charm. There is still a lot of like emergent gameplay based on routing and morale checks and stuff like that, but it's really easy to play. And I can see why this is getting a lot of attention, because if you don't want like a big complex great battles of the American Civil War kind of system, this can give you a battle in an hour or 90 minutes even. This one probably you could play in 45 minutes with 2 players who have played this system before. So it's cool. First couple of turns down, this is where we stand. AP Hill's going to come on the map. That might change things up a little bit. And you basically know how to play 85-90% of the game based on what I've showed you so far with the dice and the combat and all of that stuff. So yeah, there's not really much more to say. I guess the one thing I should say is each commander has a, see, you can see these markers up here. They have a marker for 1 reroll per game for a unit in their formation, either a morale check or an attack. So probably going to save those till it's critical, but the Union closing in on some victory points here. Turn 6, Union going now. Had some ineffective artillery fire here across this creek. We've had, who is that? That's early move up and exchange some fire with Geary across that creek. No one's made a melee attack yet, but I'm thinking I'm missing something. So melee is a new thing, obviously, and the terrain effects don't include any sort of melee modifiers, but I have to imagine there's some sort of creek or river penalty to melee attacks across. So I'm just going to say it's going to be -1, -2 if it comes to pass on the Confederate turn that they decide to try and melee Geary. Unfortunately, down here, no, not the ability to rally that unit. AP Hill coming up the road, and fire was really ineffective from Winder's brigades on the Union, so holding position there. Jackson has backed up into the woods, afraid now of the Union artillery. The only thing I should mention is the dismounted cavalry over here actually is in command. It's got an asterisk after its name, so that unit's always in command, does not have to be within range of Banks. So I moved Banks back to his starting position so that all the artillery can fire every turn. And this is the last turn that Ewell is going to be held. So Ewell is going to be able to move in starting next turn. That should be quite interesting. And yeah, we're just moving right along. I mean, this game is real short, real simple, but it's fun. I'm enjoying it quite a bit. Routes across the board. So Williams's assault here has routed the Confederate defenders. But the charge across the cornfield, not so successful, which is withering fire from the Confederates, and they have routed all of the Union units who were trying to make that advance, which was completely unexpected that they failed those checks. But here we are with kind of a breaking situation late in the day where, I'd rather be the Confederates right now given the status of the units. We do have to roll for rally, so some of these people could recover, and it's likely that they'll recover, but they're way out of position. Confederates real unlucky here in the 620 turn. We did some fire here that was ineffective. We did some fire here that was ineffective. AP Hill couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, so we're going to declare our first melee. So the way this works is you declare 1 attacking unit for melee, and you have to take another round of defensive fire. So in this case, these dismounted cavalry are going to be firing at 6. Who do we want to attack with? Probably, so if we attack with Tolver and we have a unit and we have a leader, that's 10. The column for 10 is not so great. The column for 16 is great, but the defensive fire is also more effective. I guess it would be 14. Is that better? It is better, but not by much. Okay, we're going to have Winder do the melee. So Bayard fires at -4 because he's dismounted cavalry and firing into woods. That's going to be nothing, which is great. So then we do our melee attack, and we are going to get, we're 10, and we're +1 for Winder himself. And it's not a great roll. 3 on 10 is nothing. So, no effect there. Presumably it was just kind of a chaotic. The soldiers didn't move forward and didn't have the bayonets out and kind of just turned back into the woods, the safety of the woods. We're going to do another melee here with AP Hill. That's 19. He's got to endure some defensive fire. That's going to be 13 -2 +1, so 13 -1. 4. The morale check, he passes based on the roll. And now he is going to attack. So 19. I don't know, like, again, do woods have a melee reduction here? I would guess that it probably does in other versions of the game. I mean, would it be easier or harder to like charge? I would probably be harder to charge into woods. You would think that like getting into hand-to-hand range in woods would be very difficult, given how much cover there is. So let's say this is a -1 and then a +1 for AP Hill himself. So let's say it's a flat roll. So it's a 6. That's quite good. 6 on 19. That's going to be 1 hit and a morale check. And unfortunately, Williams just failed the morale check, so he's going to route. So when a leader routes, they have the option of moving 2 hexes, I think, away. 1, 2, 3. I'll have to double check that, but he possibly has the opportunity to go here with Crawford, but I'll double check that. In either case, Hill can advance, and he will advance, driving the Union charge on the right off, and handily, actually. All right, short answer is he would have had to have been within 2 hexes of a unit in order to join him, so he's got to join the route. Williams does, so that's where we are. Turn of events here in the woods around the Crittenden Gate. Crawford volleyed into Branch in the forest and rolled well enough to do a leader check, cause a leader check on AP Hill. And then AP Hill failed his leader casualty check. So AP Hill became a casualty in this battle, and he is forced back and is replaced by a subordinate there, which means that the command range of his formation is now only 3 hexes from him. So that's going to have potentially some impact on the game. Maybe not, because most of AP Hill's formation is down here, and who is this? This is Thomas is in command because of Jackson's proximity. But nonetheless, thought it was interesting that we did manage to take out AP Hill in the first volley that he had to defend against from the Union troops. Crawford managed to stand in against really heavy Confederate fire on that salvo. Basically, did not rout. But other problems is for the Union is that Ewell's or Trimble's brigade under Ewell is crossing on the Mitchell Station Road and routed the left flank there. Banks or Augur desperately trying to get his units rallied. The only thing really being able to stop him is Geary. And this is going to be the second to last turn, so we really need the Union to get some units into the Cedars area, neighborhood, because they need to hold 2 of those at the game end, otherwise they can't win. Not gonna lie, I think the Union, this one's a lost cause, which is pretty historical. In fact, the results have been pretty historical. The Union trying to get down here to take some of these hexes, and they just are not able to stand in there. There's no defense against how big these Confederate brigades are. Ewell drove off, routed one of Augur's units, and the dismounted cavalry under Bayard couldn't stand in against this artillery, so the only one who's really acquitting himself well is Williams and Crawford, who are taking just absolutely a pounding in these woods, but are refusing to retreat. Unfortunately, we have a night turn coming up. There's some special rules for night turns, and so I do not think it's possible, maybe, for the Union to be able to make it where they need to get to, but we'll play it out and see what happens, because I want to know what the casualty difference is. All right, we've come to the end of Cedar Mountain with the 8:20 turn, the nighttime turn. It was a Confederate victory, as I expected, and as you can see, the Union position has not gained an inch, while the Confederates are threatening to kind of storm the Union line here if this battle continued into another day. Historically, I guess the Union was en route up this road, and as you can see, some of the units have been doing that. So the final casualties actually is pretty interesting. Final casualties ended up being exactly the same. Both had 37 casualties per side, so there was actually a 0 VP difference between the two. But in order to win, the Union needed to have at least 5, and they needed to control 2 hexes of this sort of highland, and of course they were nowhere close to that. I may have made some different decisions earlier in the game, potentially maybe not dithered so much with the artillery, but it is a short scenario, so it fell along historical lines, and ahistorically, AP Hill went down under gunfire. We did destroy 2 Confederate artillery units in totality, but there were just a lot of hits up in here in the infantry that tried to cross this stream. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I thought the system, it's doing a lot with very little, which is cool. And this is a nice taster. I can foresee other games where there's a lot more troops, and you can keep a line, an integrated line of units so that you can't get sort of surrounded. would be a lot of fun. More cavalry units, potentially artillery being more sort of tactically important here. The Union artillery here just outclasses the Confederate artillery, but with such a short period of time, it's hard to inflict the amount of losses you would need to really, securely take this position. Now this is the battle, the sort of, I guess I would call it the day of battle scenario, the historical scenario. There is an approach to battle scenario, which they call a free setup scenario, and that one begins on turn 1. So you actually have 2 full turns coming onto the map with both sides. So you kind of approach the battlefield with both armies and can kind of choose where you want to set up. I don't think that the Union would maybe make much different choices with that setup scenario. Maybe they would come along the north here and set up facing this direction so that they didn't have to cut through all of these woods. But I guess they historically would have done that to anchor the flank. And as the Confederates, I see no reason. I believe the Confederates come on here. I'd have to check the scenario book. Let me see real quickly where they would come onto the map. They might come in down way down here. This is... Yeah, 0115. So they come in here is where they come in. So I don't see a reason if you were to play that scenario for the Confederates to do anything other than set up in this tree line, because that is the best terrain advantage that you can have. And you could potentially, well, I guess if the Union goes north in this direction, they come down this road and set up here, then you might not want to do that because you have to protect these highlands. You wouldn't want to let them get a foothold. But it would be an interesting battle of maneuver at the beginning. And I might play this game again just because it was so fast using that scenario, because I think that would be the way I'd prefer to play this moving forward. It just provides a little bit more maneuver flexibility for both sides. I do like this game's scale. It is the Brigade scale. So we're 1 level up from Blind Swords. And we're kind of in that sort of Black Swan, Most Fearful Sacrifice level, maybe even just slightly higher than that. About the same, I would say. So if you're looking for a Brigade level Civil War game, this one is pretty good. The only thing that I would say is that it would probably be pretty tedious to play some of the bigger games in this series. So Antietam, Shiloh, the ones where you've got a couple maps or a huge map full of units. The mechanics aren't particularly deep. It's just a lot of dice rolling, but the positional stuff is, and where you choose to attack is, and stuff like that. But it is kind of grindy. Like both sides kind of grind against each other. So you're not talking about the depth of great battles in the American Civil War, or even sort of like the strategic thinking in great campaigns of the American Civil War. This feels much closer to Blind Swords to me than either of those, without sort of the dynamics of the chip pull and what have you. But it's still good. I still like it. And so for someone who doesn't like heavier war games, this is really impressive with what it's doing with such a short rule book. I think, the 7 Days Battles and the recently released Franklin are probably that sweet spot for me for this system if I'm going to play it again, because the scenarios aren't too big. They can play pretty quickly, and they're much more beautiful productions than this, which is a magazine game. But I'm glad I picked this up. It's a nice taster, and I definitely think there's more to explore here with the approach to battle scenario. So I hope you like this look at the Worthington Games Civil War Brigade Battle series, I believe. This one presented by via Victis via the Battle of Cedar Mountain, 1862.